What if I told you one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses is being tied to a lawsuit involving secret subpoenas, hacked emails, and a fake court case just to silence a former employee? This isn't gossip. It's all in the legal filings, and the most shocking part, she hasn't said a word about it. Hasn't said a word. Have you guessed the celebrity we're talking about by now? Well, by the title you should have known, since you clicked on this video. Yes, that's right. It's Blake Lively, one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses since Sandra Bullock or Meryl Streep. Stay tuned. You'll also need to sit down to process all the shady business this actress has been up to. Blake Lively is suddenly in the middle of a legal mess that's gone way beyond backroom legal briefs. This all started with a court case, but then it took a turn. Brian Friedman, the well-known choreographer, didn't just accuse her of dodging a deposition. He challenged her to do it live in Madison Square Garden with a live stream. All proceeds going to a DV charity. You heard that right. And now the internet is buzzing. Why would he go this public? And what exactly is she trying to avoid? It's no longer just about testimony. It's about exposure. Literal public exposure. But that challenge, bold as it was, barely scratches the surface. Because while Blake's keeping quiet, someone else is back in the hot seat. And what she's accused of could blow the lid off a very messy operation. But then it all gets crazier. Stephanie Jones, a PR powerhouse who's been tied to Lively in recent years, is now deep in a court fight of her own. Her former employee, Jen Abel, isn't just suing. She's accusing Jones of accessing her personal email and cloud data after she was fired. The twist? There was no company policy allowing Jones to do that. No written rules. No digital boundaries. And yet those emails and iCloud files ended up in Jones's hands. Stephanie responded fast, with a legal motion to dismiss everything. But here's the catch. Dismissals are supposed to challenge legal grounds, not argue facts. And Jones's lawyers? They're submitting pages of messages, screenshots, even texts they claim are proof. But that strategy may backfire because the court isn't supposed to consider any of that yet. Even worse, there's now evidence that the data might have been obtained through a fake lawsuit, a sham subpoena. According to Jen Abel's side, Stephanie Jones orchestrated a bogus legal case in New York, with no judge, no real parties, just enough to get access to Jen's phone data through a subpoena. That means private conversations, emails, and iCloud files, all handed over under the false impression of legal legitimacy. If true, this isn't just shady, it could be a federal issue. Legal experts say it looks like abuse of process. And worse, the lawsuit on paper never even moved forward. It appears to have been created solely to unlock subpoena power. The court documents call it transparent, fabricated, and abusive. And that raises a bigger question. What were they hoping to hide? Well, once the data was in hand, Jones's team didn't just use it in court, they used it as ammo. They submitted text messages they claimed were from Jen, except many of them weren't. Some were from other people sent to her. One in particular was from a colleague venting about clients, but Jones's team presented it as if it came from Jen herself. That's a big deal. Because of misrepresenting a message's author, it doesn't just mislead the court, it poisons public perception. And for a motion that's supposed to argue legal insufficiency, this move could be seen as manipulative. Judges aren't blind to that. And defense strategies that rely on twisting the narrative instead of addressing the claims tend to unravel fast under scrutiny. But that's not the craziest part yet. What really stands out in Jones's filing, though, is the tone. This wasn't just a legal brief. It read like a press release, a hostile one. Words like treachery, two-faced, scornful, those weren't buried in the footnotes. They were front and center. Legal filings like this aren't supposed to be emotional, but Jones's motion reads like a character assassination attempt. And while that might score points online, it doesn't impress judges, especially when those insults come in place of solid legal arguments. It suggests the motion's goal isn't justice, it's damage control. And that's dangerous ground to stand on in federal court. The biggest legal risk for Jones may be the digital boundaries she crossed, or allegedly crossed. Abel's case hinges on the idea that even if the phone was company-issued, her personal accounts were off-limits. Legal precedent supports that. Just because an email is accessible on a work phone doesn't mean the employer owns it, especially without a written policy or clear consent. Jones's lawyers say Abel handed over her passcode. Abel says it was only to port her number to a new device. If the court sides with Abel, Jones could face violations under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, a federal statute that covers unauthorized access, even by insiders. That's not just a lawsuit. That's a door to civil liability, or worse. And here's where Jones's strategy might completely unravel. Motions to dismiss are supposed to test the legal foundation of a claim. That's it. No facts, no evidence. Just, does this complaint have enough to proceed? And yet, Jones filled her motion with disputed facts, long explanations, out-of-context texts, and character attacks. That signals something to the judge. It says, we don't have strong legal grounds, so we're shifting the story. And that's not how you win a dismissal. If anything, it's how you convince a judge to let the case move forward. You know what's also crazy about this? Blake Lively's name appears throughout these filings, not as a defendant, but as a known associate and alleged collaborator. Jen Abel's amended complaint claims that Lively and her legal team coordinated closely with Jones during this entire process. That's not a good look, especially when the accusations include fake lawsuits, secret subpoenas, and the possible violation of digital privacy laws. Blake hasn't made a statement, but the longer she stays silent, the more damaging the silence becomes. Because now, this isn't just a behind-the-scenes legal spat. It's a public narrative, and Blake, like it or not, is part of that narrative. At the heart of this case is a much deeper issue, one that goes beyond Blake, beyond Jones, beyond Abel. It's about how powerful PR figures can weaponize insider information and legal gray zones to silence dissent. Abel's suit suggests that Stephanie Jones used her status, her access, and her legal teams not to protect a client, but to punish a former employee. That, if proven, could open the door to broader industry scrutiny. Are other firms doing the same? Are there more digital breaches going unnoticed? If this case proceeds and all signs point to that, it could change how we think about power, privacy, and accountability in the influencer economy. And here's where the court of public opinion starts overlapping with the actual courtroom. Legal battles are one thing, but when those battles spill into headlines, social media threads, and Reddit deep dives, the narrative starts to shift. People aren't just looking at motions and statutes, they're reacting to what feels shady. And in this case, it's starting to feel like a coordinated effort to control the story from every angle. The public is watching how the legal team presents their case, but they're also watching who stays quiet. Because silence when you're surrounded by chaos doesn't look like strength. It looks like strategy. And if the strategy is to protect reputations by burying the truth, the internet won't let it stay buried for long. So now the stage is set. Stephanie Jones's motion may not be enough to stop this lawsuit. Jen Abel's claims are gaining traction. And Blake Lively? She's still saying nothing. But silence doesn't mean distance. And as the pressure mounts, from the courts, from the public, from viral headlines, one thing becomes clear. This story is far from over. The facts are messy. The people involved are powerful. And the next time we hear about this, it might not be from court documents, it might be from a courtroom. If you're following this case as closely as we are, make sure you're subscribed. There's a lot more coming, and you won't want to miss what surfaces next.